To another edition of 24 Floors Up Podcast. This is episode 8, and it's going to be a super exciting event today. We got a fantastic speaker, host, guest who's a big influencer in his business. He's a game changer. But first off, let's go around the table, and I'm going to start from right to left as it looks on my screen, which means Jerry, Gary, Jason, and then myself. So Jerry, why don't you introduce yourself about what you do day to day, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that Scotch collection behind you too.
Sure. So, hello everyone. This is Jerry Moneycorrode, and I'm with representing D-Man Training Technologies. We have a sales training platform, sales training and marketing consulting. Our focus is with healthcare companies, and currently our latest focus is with digital selling. Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, and you're a fine connoisseur of some Indian scotches. I went to the Total Wine and Liquor with you a couple weeks back, and I learned a lot. And you also have a blog too about a whiskey blog. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm not a connoisseur. I just drink a lot. Yeah, this is my.
You're a heavy practitioner.
Yeah, my blog. I do deep research. That's what I do. D-Man's whiskey pages. So you can just Google that if you're interested. But yeah, I do like to. I like to try alcohol from all different places. So yeah, this side is my Indian whiskey collection here. And then I do have Scotch and bourbon, and I have some Irish and stuff downstairs.
I see you got a little bit of Canadian action in there. My company is based out of Toronto, so.
Oh yeah, Canada has some really, really good stuff coming out from there.
Well, I live in the South, so Charlotte, North Carolina. I have to represent the bourbon.
Oh, there you
go. That's great. Yeah. All right, hey Gary, welcome to the pod.
All right. Yeah. A pleasure to be here. Can we get a snapshot of that whiskey so we can tell Jerry what to bring to the next podcast? I wish I had something exciting behind me. I have a light switch. It's a pretty neat one. So I'm with Unbiased Data, and what we do, we're a management consulting company, and the way we provide our business solutions or recommendation is through client and employee perception analytics. So we have a team of data analysts and a team of business consultants, and we'll talk to our clients' clients or our clients' potential clients if they're trying to enter a new market or pivot to a new market. And then we can also talk to our clients' employees to help them. We come in as a third party and give them an unbiased view of their organization from their perspective of their clients and employees.
And Gary, you have a lot of hobbies, right?
Depending on who you ask, I guess. Which one are you thinking about?
Well, of course, your jiu-jitsu at the Gracie Barra.
Oh yeah. That's how I stay in shape. I get people to chase me around, and you know, if you get bored working out, that'll make you not think about working out as much. Have people try to beat up on you.
Yeah, man, your forehead's looking a lot skinnier this week.
You were waiting to use that line, weren't you?
Well, we saw your fat head from your picture post this morning from the Garden of the Gods outside of Colorado Springs. So what was that yesterday? So I think Gary's nudging ahead of you in that department. Hey, Jason, hey man, before you get started, man, I really want to thank you for jumping on with us. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say and what you have to offer for our audience and also your clients. And what are your passions as well? So,
well, I mean, my passions include a little bit of whiskey, as y'all could understand.
Bottle won't drink itself.
Yeah, so I appreciate you having me. So this is actually a pretty cool opportunity for me. Patrick's a buddy of mine. So I met Patrick through a mutual friend. We initially met actually on Lake Travis for a bachelor party. And he had to bring me to the airport at the end of the bachelor party, which both of us didn't speak too much because, as you can imagine, we're in a little rough shape. But his buddy Pierce Trucka is a very dear friend of mine. I was a roommate of his wife in college, and it's my wife's best friend, Megan now Trucka, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I saw that, Patrick was, doing this new endeavor with digital selling and working with D-Man. So, I reached out to him and I thought it made sense. So I'm the director of partnerships and channel at a company called Grapevine6. We are a social selling and employee advocacy platform. So I sell software. I work in the enterprise space. I've worked with companies like Microsoft, Mitel. Our biggest client right now is SAP. Jerry, you're making me very happy right now because I can see you opening.
When I saw your Scotch glass, I was like,
I always got the fancy glassware too.
Oh, totally. So we work, really our bread and butter surrounds compliance and working in heavily regulated industries, right? Social communication is something that needs to be archived and needs to be governed just like any other communication, right? Voice over IP, email, all of that needs to be archived, and there always has to be some sort of compliance officer to making sure that people don't say stupid things, right? So there's some really cool stuff that we do with AI. Today, I think we're going to focus on some of the risk mitigation, not only from a heavily regulated industry standpoint, but also, from a technology standpoint, because that is really my strong suit. I'm a nerd, if you will. From a passion standpoint, I mean, I'm from Michigan, bro. I played hockey. I started ice skating when I was 3 years old and played into college and university. As my company is based out of Toronto, Canada, so I have to learn how to speak their lingo. And then I played rugby as well. And I do enjoy myself some red wine. More importantly, I enjoy myself a good glass of whiskey with a little bit of ice. But yeah, I'm excited to chat with you guys and learn a little bit more about what you guys do, and talk through some of the stuff that we do. So I'll hand that over to you, Patrick.
Yeah, thanks. I would have taken you more for a neat whiskey drinker, but there you go.
You have to dilute it just a little bit. I'm getting softer at my old age. Listen, after you have a few children, you have to dilute it just a small amount.
Yeah, thanks.
In the South, you want a little cold once in a while, so.
Oh yeah, well it's 90. It's not as hot as it is in Houston, but it was 96 degrees here today.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm really happy that you reached out to me because Gary, Jerry, and I are really excited about organizing this digital selling conference and hopefully becoming a thought leader, at least for the Houston space, if not, branching out a little further. But basically the way it started was we had surveyed some sales and marketing professionals at a big business luncheon several months back. And it showed to us that people in the Houston market in particular lacked knowledge of the digital aspect of selling. All right. How do you do that? Because Jason, you and I talked, you told me about that guy that we were talking to and said, well, everybody needs to get on Facebook, right? So, but how exactly does that look? So basically the idea is to provide an experience and an environment for sales professionals as well as marketing professionals and business owners, entrepreneurs. And it's really industry agnostic, but considering that we're here in the Houston market, we're always around oil and gas people. We're around healthcare people because the biggest medical center in the world, I'd argue, I'm actually looking at just about 2 miles away. Where people are going to buy these days and where they're looking for their information and where they're looking for their solutions, whether that be B2C or B2B, is online. And exactly how do you reach them? How do you engage with them? How do you understand what they're looking for so that you can join the conversation at a timely moment to be able to provide real value? And so that's where the conference comes out of. And again, for our followers from the last 7 episodes, the Digital Selling Conference is going to be in early 2019 in mid-February. It's going to be the day after Valentine's Day. What do we call it, Gary? A love-in with digital selling?
I don't know. That's your phrase.
Oh, okay.
Sounds good though.
All right. And it's going to be at the most beautiful property in Galveston, Texas. Yes, Galveston, Texas. It's at the San Luis Resort Spa and Conference Center, and it's going to be an all-day affair where we're going to have 10 thought leaders from experts in artificial intelligence, which we're about to dive into. We're going to talk about content marketing analytics. We're going to have a couple digital marketing experts, and we're going to have two keynote speakers, one at the front end and one at the back end with some workshops in between. And there's also going to be a really rich opportunity for networking with all of our attendees and also our corporate sponsors, which D-Man, Training Technologies, and Unbiased Data are sponsors of. So there's going to be a really rich opportunity for some professional networking, and we're really excited about it. So let's quit the scuttlebutt and let's just get right to it. Jason, we wanted to talk today about artificial intelligence as it applies to sales. I mean, can you just start off by telling me, when you hear that, what does that mean to you?
Well, first I want to say, you brought up a good point, right? The sales journey has changed, right? The buyer's journey is changed. So what we typically have seen as the funnel is not the same as it once was. Folks are much more self-educated. They're empowered. What they're doing is not only are they going to the Google and doing their searches, but they're also turning to their social networks and their peers, and they're asking for advice, right? So it's very important that you incorporate digital. And working with SAP, one of the greatest things I've heard from a gentleman named Phil Lurie, he's one of our main stakeholders at SAP. He's their VP of technology. He talks about it because we talk about social selling a lot. We talk about the use of social media, but it's so much more than that, right? It's evolved to digital selling. So it's not just the use of social, it's the use of all digital aspects. So I love where your guys' concepts come from when you're organizing, this digital selling conference, right? In Galveston, that's going to be happening in February 15th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's make sure that when I'm doing the drops, we need to make February 15th, Galveston, Texas. Make sure you're there. I forgot the name of the venue, but we can
sort that out later.
You can name drop that. Yeah, right on.
Bottle.
Yeah, well, maybe a few sips thus far. But yeah, so what we do is, D-Man, the training that you guys probably do, I'm sure incorporates. And actually, Gary, I'm very interested to hear more about what you do from an unbiased perspective, the types of analytics that you guys work with, because a lot of that stuff is very, it's stuff that is just foreign to other folks, right? Especially from a business perspective. Folks that work in the oil and gas industry, let's be honest, they're a bit archaic in their practice. Just like what I work with, primarily is financial services. They're still stuck in their old ways. But regardless, this whole idea of digital transformation and, cloud computing and digital selling, it's really at the forefront. So what we do in working with companies like SAP and, companies like Royal Bank of Canada and UBS, KeyBank, we really help them understand, right? We have folks that are baby boomers, if you will, folks that are 60 and above that are wealth managers that don't, they look at us and they're like, why should I use social? This is what my kids' use. We teach them the dollar value that is behind the actual revenue that is behind every single post, right? And that's very, very impactful and important, showing a return on investment and showing that there's actual revenue involved. I mean, I'm a salesperson. I started my sales career making 280 phone calls a day, Patrick, as you and I discussed, selling print advertising for sports publications. And just everything has changed, right? There's ways to influence and build your network and influence decision makers, surround sell, because the average sales cycle is much longer than it ever was. And there's, on average, I think it's 6.8 individuals that are involved in a decision-making process when it comes to B2B, software sales. I could only imagine when it comes to other things. So when you talk about AI, I really want to make it super simple for sales folks. It's hard enough for us to record activity in CRM, right? Giving us, some of the tools and the technologies available, it really helps to streamline, the sales process. Now, in my, niche world of social selling, we use Grapevine6 is the company, as you guys know, like I mentioned before. We use AI to crawl for content that is specific to the user. So if I'm a financial advisor, if I'm a salesperson, we go out and we find content that's relevant to you. We have over 10,000 sources, 42 million articles, 100,000 articles per day are indexed in our database. All of that, talking through some of the risk mitigation stuff, all of that goes through compliance mechanisms to make sure that you're not saying something you shouldn't, you're not misrepresenting the company. So the way I see it is it's a way to really streamline the process. We're not saying that you should stop making cold calls. You should stop sending emails. Those are all valid ways to connect and engage with prospects and, initially close business. But at the same time, there's much easier ways to do that, with the use of technology and the use of AI. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that little blurb there. Let's go around, and I want to hear from Gary. Gary, tell us a little bit about. I know you have a big passion with big data. Obviously, that's a huge component with your business. So, can you tell us a little bit more about unbiased data and maybe a little bit of bridge between what Jason was talking about there?
Sure. Is there echo going?
No, you're good.
Okay, I'm hearing some feedback on my end.
Yeah, I do hear a bit of feedback.
How about now? Better?
You're good.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So there's not at least at this point with unbiased data, there's not a huge amount of data we're looking at. So we're doing interviews and surveys. We're basically giving our clients and our clients' employees a voice. So we're a lot of, if you think about the social side of strategy, if a client's not happy with our client, they may just go somewhere else. They're not going to share recommendations on how they should improve their business. And the same way with their employees, they'll just go somewhere else as well, instead of having those difficult conversations with their managers. So we come in as a third party, and we'll do interviews, we'll do surveys. The interviews are more like a high level, just a discussion, and then we'll craft a set of survey questions that get really specific around items identified from the interview. And so it's a lot different than your typical marketing survey or some other form of survey. You're actually trying to find the root cause of a business problem based on a discussion that's been had. And so our data analysts create those questions in a way that they can be quantified. And we've already had a discussion with the client. So the odds of having a higher close rate is, as far as response rate, is higher. Because typically surveys, people don't respond to surveys. They just, ignore them.
So I've got a quick question. So when you're doing the surveys, it sounds like you do both internal, for internal development, but you also do that for client facing, right? For customer service and also, from a sales perspective, I'd want to know what issues, my prospects or my clients have with our business, right? Is that kind of what you're saying? Is you structure this based upon the feedback? You're the unbiased resource, right? That's saying, hey, client, tell me what you would want out of ABC company, if in a perfect scenario, or what's your service been like with this specific client? Is that accurate?
Yeah, the initial discussion is very open-ended, but it's very similar to a SWOT analysis. We call it an M table. So what's our client winning at? What are they losing at? What are some opportunities if they change, they would get more business from you? What kind of competition are you seeing that are offering similar product or services, or maybe even better? And maybe not even from the same industry. So we have those sort of open-ended questions, and we gather that information, and then we go back and collaborate with our client after we've talked to several of their clients. And typically it's B2B, like strategic partners, clients that they work with on a regular basis. The B2C environment, it's more difficult because you might end up talking to hundreds of people. So we take that information, we collaborate, and then we come up with a hypothesis on ways that improvements can be made. And that's when we identify the survey questions that can be quantified. And then we distribute those to the people we've interviewed. So the response rate is going to be a lot higher because we've already talked to those people. It's not like a random survey they just get in their inbox. And then so once we get all that data back, we can create a visual component to where our consultants can look at it and say, okay, and these are consultants that are very experienced. They have a lot of education, so they can easily go in and form a hypothesis and say, hey, I think this is what you should do. But they're actually looking at the data to make decisions versus just going off their own, anecdotal knowledge, if you will.
I love that. No, that makes perfect sense.
That's it in a nutshell. You mentioned oil and gas. We have been approached by other opportunities outside of the perception analytics piece to where people already have data that they want us to look at. And so we're exploring that. We're having some pretty serious discussions around oil and gas right now and fracking and that sort of thing. So I have a meeting next week with some other potential business partners on that. And so we're growing fast. Our model we have in place allows us to grow fast with a limited number of costs. So it's been pretty exciting. And we launched a couple months ago, and we have 13 people now. We represent 5 countries, 13 different languages. So pretty industry agnostic on the perception analytics piece. But
do you guys do anything with social media? I mean, are you guys sending out, surveys to folks that follow these corporate brands or, your clients? Has that ever, been brought up, or is that top of mind?
Yeah. So as we grow, it's been, at least from the awareness standpoint and generating traffic, as the team grows, they're sharing posts and so we're getting some engagement that way. We're trying to figure out a way to be more methodical in our approach versus just a lot of social media blasts. Try to figure out and I've talked to Jerry a little bit about this as far as the breadcrumb analogy, if you will. So you create a post and it leads to something else, which leads to something else. And it's like anything, it's like a typical sales funnel. So we're trying to critique that to a certain degree. And maybe you have some ideas around that because, I would like to think there's a difference between just random posts and then posts with a purpose behind them to lead them to the next step. And maybe you have some ideas around that yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
go ahead, Jason.
Well, sorry, I don't mean to jump in, but once we start talking about social media, which I like to because that's what I do, there's a lot of things that you can do, from LinkedIn to Twitter and Facebook, right? They all have targeted advertising. And what you could do is you could really hyper focus on oil and gas and or folks that work at a specific company, right? So if, let's just say, ABC Gas Company wants to learn more about how they can better their HR, their turnover, right? Maybe they just have terrible turnover. They got a bunch of people that just, work there for a couple months and then quit, right? You could target folks that within their LinkedIn profile or within their Facebook page shows that they work at ABC Gas. You could target them with a survey and say, hey, what's your experience like? Almost like a glass door, right? And it gives you the ability to gather that data. At aggregate, you can show that data to the client and say, hey, this is where you guys are missing and this is where you guys really need to work on, right? Because that's what you're trying to do. And I don't know if that scenario works. I don't know enough about your business, but just off the top of my head, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think what you're describing fits well, and I think it aligns with the brand. I mean, we're thinking from a perception standpoint, it's unbiased because we're coming in as a third party, but exactly. It can work the same way if they already have the data. Because I mean, part of our culture that we're trying to build is a culture of complete transparency to where we're not afraid to tell a client that their business needs work in a particular area. I know some consulting firms just want to put a rubber stamp on things, and
that's a fun conversation to have, by the way.
I can imagine.
The analogy that we refer to oftentimes is the analogy of take somebody's watch and tell them what time it is, and that's the kind of consulting around there, right?
Yep. Have you heard? So there's, in reading some of the books, and Patrick and I had talked a bit about Challenger Sale by the guys over at CEB. One of the best books I've ever read. It's called Getting Naked, and it's a really short read. I recommend it. For anybody. I think I read it in a day, in a few hours at that. It's a very short read, but it's all about consulting and really kind of stripping yourself down and looking at it and asking those tough questions, right? Looking at it from an outside perspective and saying, okay, so what types of, and drilling down to the real issue. I mean, that's the biggest problem with companies when they're trying to better themselves, is trying to figure out, you know, what the problem is, right? And they may think one way, and it's the same thing with, you know, when you know, kind of feeding back to digital selling. Folks go out there and they think they have this issue, and then they go research on social networks, they go research, you know, on the Google, and Gardner or Forrester or IDC, one of the analysts, I think it's about 69% of folks are reaching out for an issue that they don't really have. They actually have a different issue that there's a different solution that they need to find. And in turn, helping folks understand what the issues are, guiding them and influencing those purchasing decisions. You know, that's where, you know, the social piece comes in. Sorry, I go on tangents every now and again.
No, I think you made a very good point there, and it's amazing that some companies don't really want to know. At least you get the impression they don't really want to know what the problems are, especially some of the bigger publicly traded companies. They want to hold on to their 401ks and their salaries and fly under the radar. At least that's what it seems like. I'm interested in that book. It definitely has a catchy title. I guess if you're walking through the bookstore, you'd be like, "What is this?"
Yeah, it's called Getting Naked. It's got a blue cover. I mean, it's really small. It's only a few hundred pages, but it's a really good read. You know, Patrick and I talked about Challenger Sale. The complex selling is another one that's really good, but Challenger Sale is awesome. It's more of a
yeah. What is the tagline there? Teach, Taylor, and what was the third T? That was like. Anyways,
I don't remember. I know that.
Talk about it. No, I'm just kidding. Fantastic book, and I appreciate you bringing that up in the Getting Naked, man. We're going to talk with Jerry real quick, and one of the things we were just talking about, and Gary was talking about, was developing the sales funnel and what that looks like from a digital sales perspective. Jerry, I want you to introduce what D-Man Training Technologies does and offers for their clients and who they serve. But you put out a really interesting infographic last week or the week before, and it walks you through what the sales process, the digital sales process looks like. So I want to hear from you, Jerry, first, and then Jason, kind of build on that, because I think it's a lot of what we're talking about.
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. So Jason, yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback, because you're one of the first people that received the infographic. So I'd love to hear your feedback. I think the most important thing is, well, once again, to reintroduce the company. We're a digital selling or a sales training company, sales training, marketing consulting. And right now our focus is digital selling. I think it works really well and in line with the conference that's coming up, and as a result, we're one of the sponsors for the conference. But to Jason's point earlier, one of the things to keep in mind is if you understand traditional selling, you can start to understand digital selling, and it's not necessarily just social. And I really like what Jason had said earlier. And a lot of people think it's just getting on Instagram and call yourself a quote unquote influencer and hope that your posts are going to be seen by somebody and they're going to just buy because you posted on the internet. No, it's not that. It's utilizing all the different aspects of the digital world, whether it's email, which some people think is outdated, but no, you can still use that very, very effectively. Text message, Instagram, even Snapchat. Gary Vee goes on about Snapchat as well. But I
love Gary Vee, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Amen. Yeah. I mean, I've learned so much from the guy. But the infographic kind of, and the article that I put out to go with the infographic aligns digital selling with the steps in traditional sales. You know, the pre-call planning, the introduction, understanding the value proposition, even closing. Each of these steps have to be aligned just as you would with traditional sales. And each of these steps go, go hand in hand with the digital side. Whether you can align cold calling with the simple interaction on social media posts, liking somebody else's posts, or somebody liking your posts, or somebody puts a post up and you go in there and put a comment on it, that's very, very similar to a cold call. And then finally, once there's a connection between the two, you take that to the next step and start the interaction, the engagement with the customer. And these steps keep going on where the customer shows, or the prospect, I should say, actually, the prospect shows some interest in your product. And then you begin the value proposition, take them down that line. And like Jason was saying earlier, referring to the challenger sale, start challenging the customer, help them better understand what their needs are. Ask them various questions, break down their fears, break down their questions, and take them down that pathway, and finally end up towards the closing stage. And you end up doing something really good for the prospect and ultimately becomes your customer.
Amen. And Jerry, I want to, just as a little sidebar, I want to thank you in case we haven't talked about it. Jerry had a tire blowout on the way in today, and man, what a champ. He jumped on the pod anyways. I guess that's a testament to Mr. Taylor. Jerry,
Thanks.
either that or really thirsty, and he raced right to that liquor cabinet right behind him. But Jason, can you expand on what Jerry was just talking about?
Yeah, and Jerry, I do appreciate the infographic. You know, I like where your head's at, right? The challenger sale is all about challenging the customer, right? Now, to kind of digress a bit, let's just start with the pre-call planning. Now, I always, you know, and I've done training and I've done workshops and I've done all sorts of things for all different companies. The way that our training process works is, you know, we start with profile optimization, right? You have to put lipstick on the pig. You have to make sure that you look good, right? You have a positive forward-facing present, a buyer-centric present, if you will. You know, there's all sorts of stuff that goes into that. And then, you know, we teach folks how to build a network. And I think you made a good point. When talking about the social network, one thing that I do want to bring up in the social network size, for instance, I don't call myself an influencer or a guru or a ninja. I don't really care how many people follow me or how many connections I have. Quantity does not matter over quality. I care that the folks that are within my network that I'm sharing content with are the folks that actually will buy my stuff.
Amen.
Right?
I agree 100% with that.
So
sorry to interrupt, but about 5 years ago, I attended a conference, and I remember I was just starting to get into social media, and that's when somebody who was really into this was telling me, as attractive as it looks, don't pay attention to those numbers.
Yeah. Like in the way I see it is it's fluffy metrics, dude. I don't care about my reach and my impressions. What I care about is closed won opportunity. When I look in my CRM report at the end of the month, I want my sales leadership to say, holy shit, Jason did a fantastic job. He closed X amount of business. And, you know, further beyond that, I'd like to say, okay, this is where that business was closed from, right? And my sales leadership wants to see that as well. And, you know, that's a different conversation, but, you know, getting back to the quantity over quality, I think it's very important that you build a quality network. And that's one thing that we preach is, hey, you need to make sure you're connecting in almost all companies, even in the oil and gas industry, they have a buyer persona. They have people that they know, whether it's their title, their geolocation, they know who purchases their stuff, who signs, whether it's procurement, could be a CFO, it could be, you know, any number of folks. So it's important that you go out and you connect with those folks and you build relationships. Now, you need to be insightful in your connections. You did a very good job, Jerry, reaching out. I mean, I sent you a quick note saying, hey, Patrick's a buddy of mine, looking forward to joining your guys' podcast, would love to connect. You replied with a great message. You know, I started a conversation. Before we even jumped on this podcast, I felt like I almost already have had that conversation. Like You're saying, from a cold calling perspective, pre-call planning, we teach a 3x3 rule. Take 3 minutes to learn 3 things about any person that you're trying to reach out to, whether you're trying to connect with them on LinkedIn, or you're about to jump on your first demo with them, or you're going to cold call them. Find out a few things about them, because if I can jump on a call and say, hey, Patrick, I saw you went to U of H. My buddy Pierce, he's a Cougar as well. I mean, that makes that conversation, and here's a perfect example. So I worked with Microsoft. I have been working with Microsoft for over 6 years now. I reached out to a gentleman that worked out of, he was a VP in Microsoft Canada out of Toronto, and I'm from Michigan. I saw that he went to Michigan State University. He also lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan for a number of years as a regional manager, and I'm from Grand Rapids. So in my outreach, I was like, hey man, I work with XYZ company. We work in the social selling space. I see that you do sales enablement for, Microsoft internally. Hashtag go green. I love that you spent time, and I think I even used hashtag Founders Brewery because that's in Grand Rapids as well. And he immediately responded with his assistant, because he's not a guy that you just call, right? He has an assistant. His assistant saying, yes, I would love to spend some time with you. So I took just a little bit of time to learn, a few things about this guy. And next thing you know, I'm on the phone with a guy that, typically you can't, you got to go through 3 different gatekeepers to even get to him.
Yeah.
So I think the pre-call planning is really a big thing. Once you get in further down the line, I think you've nailed quite a few points as far as the introduction and qualifying questions. That's part of the, kind of the similar sales process that we're used to. That's part of, the structure of, a sale at more of a transactional level. Obviously that changes when you're dealing with enterprise organizations and, more of a complex selling environment. But at the same time, all very useful. I think that social is a way to build relationships and influence, decision makers. And I think digital, for that matter, could all be considered that bundle as well, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. I agree with you 100% there.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that little tidbit, 3x3 rule. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of that. And like I said at the start of the pod, people have, they understand that they need to be on these things, but how do you do it? What strategies do you use? What do you implement? And with that said, you kind of started it in with a CRM, and we started talking about artificial intelligence and how that relates to the whole sales funnel that we're talking about and sales automation. So in your experience, can you talk us through, like we talked about qualifying questions, qualifying prospects, and how artificial intelligence will enable a salesperson to achieve their goals?
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple, man. There's all sorts of software out there that uses artificial intelligence. And from my perspective, artificial intelligence, because, once again, we work with heavily regulated industries. What our app does, and I'm not trying to plug our app. I'm just trying to explain to you why I deem it beneficial, right? Each individual is different. So if there's 1,000 folks at a company and I'm trying to get them to amplify or become advocates or become social sellers, I want them to have access to not only marketing content, but third-party content that is relevant, right? So what we do from an AI perspective is we use NLP, natural language processing, and machine learning. And when someone goes in and logs into our app, it goes and looks at all of the content on their LinkedIn page, and it looks at the content they've shared and the engagement they've got, and it creates what's called an interest graph, right? And it could say, Patrick Weir is very interested in 3D printing and blockchain and artificial intelligence. And you can tweak that, any which way within the application, but it will feed you content that is relevant to those specific interests, right? And that's not only a representation of your personal brand, but it's a representation of the engagement that your network is providing, right? So it's not only benefiting you as an individual, but it's benefiting, the folks that are absorbing your content. So that's just one example. And what was that?
Is it telling you what your employees are posting, or is it telling you, let's say I wanted to reach out to Patrick, I plug in his name and it tells me about what his interests are? I mean,
so we do have a Google Chrome plugin that is outward facing. So what we have is a profiling engine, right? And as a salesperson, I have access to a mobile app, and that mobile app is fed with content. And the content is coming from our sources. We, like I mentioned earlier, over 42, million articles. So we have a database of content. And it's all tagged by, wealth management or financial advisor or, blockchain or AI. So when I log in, it's feeding me content in real time that is relevant to those interests. And a lot of that has to do with the plain text on my LinkedIn profile, but also the content that I've shared in the past. Does that make sense? Now,
I think
from an aggregate perspective, yes, there's reporting and analytics that show like, all of your employees are sharing XYZ type of content and it's doing the best. You should focus on that. For marketing, that's great because they can see what they should really focus on, what type of engagement, their sales folks are getting. But it's much more individualized than that. It's not just from a corporate brand perspective. We're looking at sales folks to be the face of the company and really drive home the value of what that company provides, but also influence and build relationships based upon their interests, right? So it's humanizing.
Okay, so just to be clear, maybe I'm a slow learner here. I'm just trying to figure it out. So you log into the app. It's a company provided app. Your corporation would provide you that app.
Yep.
You log in and you see that. For example, let's say Patrick is interested in soccer or something business related, and then I can pull an article from the library of articles and send it to him. And the benefit of that. And so those are the two scenarios, right?
Well, and I mean, yeah. So that is one scenario, is that one-to-one, but also there's the one-to-many, right? So I share with my network. So LinkedIn, I've got however many thousand folks connected with me and however many thousand, followers on Twitter. I want to share content that is relevant to my personal brand. So what I do, social selling, social media, Detroit Red Wings, Detroit Lions, woo woo, all things that I'm interested in. But go Houston. But I go ahead and I share content to my network that is relevant to those pieces, right? Risk mitigation for heavily regulated industries. That's another step, like compliance and governance, GDPR, stuff that I deal with on a daily basis. I want to share content because I built my network and I know who is going to be consuming that content. So I know what they should be, what they are going to be interested in. So it's a representation of my personal brand. Now, that being said, our AI profiling engine doesn't even work. It doesn't just work on the specific individual, the salesperson. We can face that outward, and I could go to Jerry's LinkedIn page and I can click our plugin on Google extension, and I can see what Jerry is interested in. And then it will feed me content that says, hey, you should share this article with Jerry about blockchain because it sounds like he's pretty interested in it, right? So it's once again building that relationship, showing it, kind of the show me you know me scenario. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I might put you on the spot a little bit here if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between pulling an article from your database and just Googling an article with that topic and sharing an article?
Bro. Time.
Okay.
I mean, so from a sales perspective, and I've seen it done many different ways, right? Marketing will send an email newsletter to sales reps weekly or daily even that says, hey, here's the top 5 articles that we want you to share. Copy and paste that into Twitter, into Facebook, into LinkedIn, and share this article. Or, hey, sales rep, I'm going to take you through this social selling training process that's 3 weeks. I'm going to teach you how you should present yourself. And then I'm going to expect you daily to go find content that is relevant to what you do and share that to your social network. The adoption is absolutely horrendous, and it's not a scalable practice, right? So what we do is we provide, from the enterprise perspective, a scalable solution that provides content, marketing, the spend on marketing and content creation and curation, we minimize that, right? We save the company money, and also we save the sales folks the hassle of having to do that.
No, that's a good point on the time aspect, because it seems like on the one side, the digital selling is growing and has added benefits. But then on the other side, you have the digital, like with CRM systems and that sort of thing, that are just consuming lots of time from the sales professionals, entering a lot of information.
Yeah. And well, so the beautiful thing about this is we integrate with CRM. So we, with Salesforce.com, for instance, we actually have a wireframe integration. So if you go into Salesforce and you go look at a lead record, we can run our profiling engine and we can gather content that's relevant to this specific person and say, okay, click here to share with this person. Now, we also, within CRM, we have the ability to open a tab that is just Grapevine6, right? And that provides all of that corporate content. It could be campaign content. It could be curated. And then also that third party, content that's relevant to me as a salesperson. So, what our whole goal is to simplify the use of social as part of the sales process. It's an evolution. It's not a revolution. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not telling folks that they should stop making phone calls and stop sending emails. We just know, as you share content and your use of social has a direct correlation with the amount of quota that you attain.
That's a good point. And yeah, I like the aspect of saving time and being seen, because there is a lot of moving parts now with, especially the digital age that we're in. And it sounds like y'all, it's almost like a hub of all those things together, which makes a seamless process.
Yeah. I mean, with proper integrations, we do act as, a portion of that hub, right? It's a hub and spoke. There's content management systems, there's, marketing automation platforms that are involved, CRM, it's a pretty complicated, process from an enterprise standpoint, but it's proven benefit. And with SAP, it was 2 billion euro, which is $2.7 billion in pipeline growth over the past 2 years that we've been able to, be a part of, which is awesome.
That's great. I'm glad that you put a dollar figure on that, because some of these investors that I talk to lately, they keep going back to, okay, how do you quantify that? Can you put that in something that I can easily understand? Oh, I'm $2.7 billion. Okay, that means something to me. That's great. And then in the essence of time, I'd like to move forward a little bit. Jason, I have just one more question for you as far as AI and CRMs go. Not all CRMs are made alike. I've worked in a couple of different industries. I've used Salesforce in the oil and gas business, and I've used another one in the healthcare space, Brightree. But how do you help your clients understand which one works the best for them?
Well, I don't. So I don't sell CRM. I've got a lot of experience with CRM just because of the companies that I've worked for over the past 10 years, I should say. Salesforce.com, Dynamics 365, obviously front runners in the CRM space. Sugar CRM is making a big push. SAP's Cloud for Customer is a great platform. Oracle's, they have a cloud CRM platform that, seems to be doing pretty well as well. And then you have more like social CRMs, right? Nimble. John Ferreira is a huge social selling guy, big influencer. He created Nimble, and it's really focused on social engagement and social interaction. What I can say is, I don't have any one CRM that I ever promote, because some of the companies I work with have homegrown CRMs, right? They built the stuff themselves. What we try to figure out is how we can integrate and how we can actually attribute revenue to those social activities. And really, that's what I focus on is putting a specific dollar value to a social post, and not only showing marketing, because it's very important to marketing, because what they can then say is, hey, this type of content or this specific piece of content has generated X amount of dollars. So leadership, I need X amount of budget to build more of this content. Sales leadership can say, oh, wow, well, webinars and, conferences have always been top ranking. What other things are involved in closing business? Is that social? Because no one has really been able to put their finger on, how they attribute revenue to social. And we've got some pretty interesting ways, that we do it. And everyone else has their own way, but once again, I'm not a CRM sales guy. I know a lot about it, and, I've learned a lot about the capabilities of the different CRMs, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I would choose one over the other, or I would promote one over the other. I sell my software, and that's a social selling platform.
Can I ask you?
I've been asked that question before about which is the best CRM, and my answer is always the one that you use. Simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, when I was making 280 phone calls a day selling print advertising, the CRM looked like it was like DOS. Like it was so old school. It
Oh
was
my
just a
God.
card with a name, and there was a button you could click for LVM, left voicemail,
Uh-huh.
or disqualify, or closed, right? And that was it. And I'm
What
sorry,
the
Gary.
heck, dude?
No,
Huh?
I like the idea around that kind of. I mean, some CRM systems just have way too much input. So, I mean, in some cases, that might actually be nice to have a DOS-based
More
system.
simplified.
Yeah, just give me an Excel sheet.
Yeah.
Uh, so the last, I kind of lost my train of thought. I had one question for you. Oh, so we were talking about sharing articles, and I know we're running short on time. Actually, we're a few minutes over.
I'm good, man.
As far as articles, what's your perspective on the salesperson writing the article versus just sharing a third-party article?
Uh-oh.
So I think that's a great thing to do, but once again, it's
Time.
intimidating, right? And time. Now, so what we preach, one of the other things I train on, and I'm going to use another kind of 3x3 scenario. It's called the 411 rule. And the 411 rule, it, I think it was originated, kind of like the 80-20 rule. Like it applies to a bunch of different things. But the way that I view it is, out of every 6 posts, 4 should be thought leadership in nature. I should be sharing content from someone else that is relevant to what I do, right? Not specifically, promoting a brand or a different solution or product or service, something that is, from CRM News or wealthmanagement.com. One of those posts out of those 6 should be humanizing. So maybe it's Patrick and I at a Texans-Lions game drinking a beer, right? And then one of them should be heavy hitting sales content that should be coming from your marketing team. It should be structured. I'm a salesperson. I wasn't trained to create engaging, content or sales content. My marketing team is they're the ones that do that. So out of every 6 articles, one of those articles should be really heavy hitting. Now, as you build, your professional career, I think that it's very important that you do start to write thought leadership articles. I've done some guest blogging, on Microsoft Partner Network. I've, done podcasts such as this with SAP. So, as you progress and you start to learn more about what you do, and you don't necessarily become a thought leader, but you're knowledgeable and you can provide relevant insight. Yes, I think it is important that you start to write and you start to express your feelings, because that really, it brings you to a different level from a sales perspective, in my personal opinion.
I agree with that. And that's why I asked. That's kind of the direction I was leaning as well. I mean, of course, you can't write an article every day, but if you put out an article periodically that is good content and positions you as the expert in that field, plus it connects emotionally, shows the human side.
Yes. Yes. Logic makes you think. Emotion makes you act. Yeah. Let's move forward a little bit. Looks like Jerry dropped off just temporarily. Hopefully he'll jump back on. But Jason, the other thing that we talked about, and we've kind of touched the surface of it a little bit, is risk compliance. One of the guys that Gary and I know mutually is a financial advisor and investment advisor. He specifically works with business owners, entrepreneurs, and helping them understand where they're leaving money off from, and they do it from a holistic perspective from both their business brand and their personal situation as well. So, and what he said, and I don't know if I shared with you this on a previous call, but he said that, I every Sunday I have about 4 posts that I have saved, and I'm ready to hit send on or publish. And there he is. Hey, Jerry. And I have to wait 24 hours before I can post that. Time moves on, right? Some of these things are time sensitive. So can you talk a little bit more about risk compliance?
Yeah. So
how do you approach that? Yeah.
I can pull in a little bit of the AI as well, right? The reason why he is waiting 24 hours is because when he hits that send button, that piece of content that he was going to share, it goes back to a compliance officer, and they manually read that article and they make sure that it's, free of risk, right? So risk mitigation is a huge piece. So the way that I see risk and the way that we see risk at Grapevine6 is there's 3 different types. And actually, I'm not going to speak for my company. This is my own personal opinion. So there's behavioral risk, there's content risk, and then there's regulatory risk, right? So if there's a wealth manager that is looking to share content to their social networks, be it a financial advisor or, someone that does, wholesaling, like our boy Pierce, there's different rules and regulations that are, in Canada, they have IROC. Here in the States, they have FINRA. I think it's FEIDC is what they have over the UK, right? There's a bunch of regulatory risk. You can't say, I guarantee X return on XYZ stock, right? So you have to have an AI component that in real time can adjust or actually trigger those risk policies and make sure that that piece of content is within guidelines. So when it comes to regulatory risk, yes, there is some AI components that we use. We use partners like Proofpoint and Safeguard Cyber, 2 great different software vendors that are all built in. Now, when it comes to behavioral risk, that's a whole different ballgame. There's a lot of different scenarios that I could tell you, for the sake of time, I don't want to dig into them too much. I'll just give you one example. It's a little bit lighthearted. Well, it's not that great. But there was a company that had someone that I was actually interviewed, an individual, and post-interview started to send in-mails through LinkedIn to this specific interviewee. Things got a little inappropriate. This person ended up suing, the company and, getting a large settlement because someone was being inappropriate via email. So once again, from an AI perspective, there's different triggers, there's different mechanisms that you can use that can go crawl not only outgoing messages, but content that you're sharing that can mitigate that type of risk. From a content risk perspective, there's a great example of a financial organization. Actually, it was an insurance company. There was an article, I can't remember exactly, I think it was Forbes or USA Today, I can't remember. But there was an article that marketing had put in a queue for an employee advocacy solution that is one of our competitors. And it got, sent out by multiple folks, right? And the article, if you just looked at it, it looked harmless, from the face, right? The title and the actual body and the URL, it looked like it was harmless. But once you drilled into the article was actually interviews with different financial advisors that worked for that company. And they started to talk about how terrible working for that company was. Oh, and the marketer had no clue. And there's statistics, once again, from the Gartner and Forresters of the world. It's like 86% of us, all of us, I'm including all of you guys, don't even read an article before we share it. So this marketer looked at it and they said, okay, well, this is a cool piece of curated content. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the queue for all of our advisors to share. And it turned out to be a terrible thing from a brand perspective. So from a risk mitigation standpoint, there are some measures you can take. There's some great tools, compliance and risk mitigation tools that are out there that you can use. We obviously have our vendors, but everyone else has theirs as well. All we're trying to do is just trying to make things very seamless and easy for sales folks to share content and mitigate that risk so that, compliance and legal, they know that they're in good hands and, they're not going to, we're not going to do anything bad. Well, their sales folks aren't going to do anything bad on social. I hope that answered the question. If so.
Yeah, that was very thorough. Thank you for that. Hey, Jason, tell us where we can find some content that you can put out. I know at JT Social Selling is your Twitter handle. Yeah. I was looking at some of your articles today. I'm really into hiking and backpacking, getting outdoors.
You saw that one about what? That was cool, man.
That was so cool.
So Seattle, the Seattle area, so Washington, they built some AI into some of the geo mapping because they like alltrails.com is an app, right? and you can track yourself. So they take that data and they give you opportune times to go to these trails because it's like the most widely used trail system in the US.
Yep.
Like I thought that was like, that blew me away. And I'm a big sportsman, right? I'm going to Montana in a couple weeks to go hunt. You know, I'm from Michigan, so I hike and do all sorts of fun stuff.
We need to talk afterwards. Yeah, but and then the other cool thing that it did that it told the park management service about what bridges needed maintenance ahead of normal schedule due to higher foot traffic than normal, because they can accurately
Isn't that rad, dude?
and,
like just based on wear and tear, and they have like an algorithm, I'm sure, that's like, you know, once a certain amount of people cross this bridge, it needs some maintenance. Like that is so cool to me.
Right. And who wants to go to a park that's scabby and, you know, unkempt, and, you know, you're not gonna have any fun.
Yeah,
you know?
right
You
on.
don't want to go to the park, the camp where there's just, you know, it's like you're going to a tailgate at the Lions game or something like, you know what I mean? I had to throw that in there. But anyway, so back to the point. At JT Social Selling is your Twitter handle. You're also on LinkedIn. You're on, I'll let you go from there.
Yeah, so I've got, you know, a Facebook business page. I think it's Social Sales Enablement. Jason Taylor Social Sales Enablement. I think my LinkedIn profile is social sales. So linkedin.com/en or in.en or /en/social sales. So you can go ahead and find me there. You know, I don't want to promote myself too much. I work for Grapevine6. My name is Jason Taylor. You'll be able to find me. Jerry, Gary, do you guys have any, you know, closing questions? And Jerry, by the way, I'd love to have a conversation to learn a little bit more about the training and stuff that you do. And Gary as well. I'd like to dive into some of the analytics if we could have an offline conversation.
Definitely.
Yeah, I will link all of us together, I suppose, in an email following this, and you guys can connect from there. I think that's great. I think everybody has some really great contributions to this, and I'd like to see some shared content and help each other out, achieving each other's goals.
Hashtag 24 floors up.
Hey.
And hey, don't forget the Digital Selling Conference on February 15th, 2019 in Galveston, Texas. Where?
At the San Luis Resort Spa and Conference Center.
St. Louis.
San Luis, yes, sir. It's brand new, renovated post Hurricane Harvey. They just dumped in a few mil into that, and I'm telling you guys, this is the gem of Galveston Island.
You might see me pop in. Patrick, you got an extra space in your apartment?
I think we can swing it for you. If not, so we can swing you a room at the hotel, and bring your gorgeous wife down, and if you can, your is it your daughter?
Yes, I've got so October 14th, she'll be 2. Her name is Camila. And then we have baby number 2 joining us March 31st. So you guys all heard it first. I don't know if she heard me, but my family knows, but now the world knows.
Okay.
Congrats.
Gary has 2 daughters. Jerry has 2 twin sons who are 15 years old.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great, man.
Yeah, if you can break it down, Jason, I know that we would love to see you, the 3 of us, and we can talk further about any further participation. But anyhow, I want to wrap up by going around the table once more. We're going to go from my right to left. We're going to go Jerry first. I want you to remind everybody about D-Man Training Technologies.
Sure. Once again, D-Man Training Technologies. We're a sales training and marketing consulting company. Our focus is with healthcare companies and small to mid-size. And right now, our training focuses are on digital sales.
Thank you. Gary?
Unbiased data. So we do perception analytics related to client and employee perception of our client's business. It's kind of it in a nutshell.
And you have several places that we can find your content on. You want to share us with that? What that is?
Sure. The best place is unbiaseddata.com.
Okay. Hey, and Jason, I don't think we ever really dived into Grapevine6, but can you give us a high-level view of that? Maybe you could say a 24 floors view.
Boom. I love it. Yeah. So Grapevine6, you can find us at grapevine6.com. Grapevine_6 because somebody already stole Grapevine6 Twitter handle, which we're working to get. Well, I am. You can find me at JT Social Selling. We are a social selling employee advocacy platform. And, we're really focused on heavily regulated industries, but anyone from an enterprise mid-market perspective is typically who we target. Looking forward to the participation, Pete Train. It's great, to chat with you again. It's been a while since we've spoken. And anything you guys need, man, I'm here to help.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, let's connect.
Absolutely. Let me just one more plug about the Digital Selling Conference. Again, it's February 15th, 2019 in what we can guarantee will be sunny Galveston, Texas. A Digital Selling Conference, we talked a lot about some of the themes on our podcast today: artificial intelligence, content marketing analytics with some of the dashboard CRM tools that Jason referred to, and some of the stuff that Gary at Unbiased Data utilizes to help achieve greater scale for his clients. So again, what digital selling does for the modern sales professional, the business owner, the entrepreneur, and the sales, marketing, and the C-level people all work together. Organizations achieve greater efficiency and they achieve greater sales figures. That's what we're looking for at the end of the day. We're looking for that top line number. So with that said, you want to understand greater where your customer is at in their journey so that you can appropriately address them where they are in that journey, utilizing some of the platforms that Jason has with Grapevine6. And you're going to do that. You're going to learn about that through our thought leaders. We have 2 keynote speakers. We have 8 other breakout workshops. There's going to be a fantastic networking opportunity for you before, in between, and after. We're going to have a cocktail session. I might swing for a old Rip Van Winkle or something for you, Jason, if you make it down.
That's what I'm talking about.
Jerry.
I think Jerry's just going to have to bring a bottle of some reserve down for me.
I will. I don't mind doing that. I've got it.
Yeah.
He's got plenty, it looks like.
Yeah.
You got some Pappy Van Winkle over there?
Well, I don't have Pappy, but I do have something here.
Oh!
Bourbon barrel.
Oh, 14-year Glenlivet. I love it. That's it.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So, we encourage everybody to go learn more about the Digital Selling Conference. It's digitalsellingconference.com. Learn about the speakers, learn about the content within those talks. You can find us on LinkedIn at Digital Selling Conference, on Facebook on Digital Selling Conference, on Instagram at digicell_1, on YouTube at digicell, and Twitter is at digital selling, I believe. Is that right, Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, basically just if you look up Digital Selling Conference on any of these platforms, you will find us.
Our SEO is rising, I guarantee you. So we encourage you to go look at this, and if you have any questions, you'll have the opportunity to shoot us your email address and get that digital sales funnel that we were talking about that Jerry created. And let's pick up the conversation from there and engage with us on any of our channels. Jason, thank you so much, my man, for jumping in with us. I've never been to the state of North Carolina, but I would love to at some point.
We miss you.
I know that Pierce, his family also has some property there as well.
Yeah.
So what's up, Gary?
Oh, my wife. It's getting late here in Houston, and my wife's been. So I'm gonna have to jump off, guys. I hate to do that.
Hey,
take it easy, Gary.
Hey,
all right. Nice meeting you.
We'll see you in a few.
Cheers, brother.
And again, Jason, thank you so much.
Hey, man, anytime.
let's get everybody connected and look out for a follow up. If you missed it right now, we're gonna chop this up into snackable sizes throughout the next few days, so that if you missed it, you can look at it and listen to some of the brilliant content that you heard today. And make it a great week. Jason, thanks a lot. Jerry,
cheers, guys.
thanks for coming in, even with your emergency. All right, guys. Y'all have a great one.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.